Black hotel maid spoke Dutch by mistake.
Look, I can't.
The millionaire's reaction shocked everyone. A young black maid, barely 27 or 28 years old, moved with calm, deliberate grace, her face always carrying a quiet elegance. Her cleaning cart rolled softly beside her, and a faint hum of a tune escaped her lips. She had been working here for almost 2 years, never late, never careless, and never truly noticed. To the guests, she was just another uniform, polite, smiling, and replaceable. But behind her gentle eyes hid a mind fluent in 5 languages, and dreams far greater than the walls she scrubbed. In the lobby, she paused for a moment to wipe down the marble counter. The scent of lemon polish mixed with expensive perfume and businessmen's cologne, filling the air with luxury. Just then, her phone buzzed softly in her pocket. The screen lit up with a name she hadn't seen in weeks. Mama. She glanced around nervously, then answered the call in a low voice. "Hallo, Mama. Ja, ik ben aan het werk," she said in fluent Dutch, her tone soft and affectionate. Across the lobby, a man suddenly looked up. Tall, sharply dressed, with streaks of silver in his hair and piercing blue eyes, Alexander van der Holt, a Dutch billionaire and the hotel's most prestigious guest. He had been reviewing business notes on his tablet, but her voice instantly captured his attention. That accent, so clear, so natural, it wasn't something learned in school. It was native, authentic. It carried the warmth of home. Amara smiled faintly at something her mother said, laughing softly as she switched effortlessly between Dutch and English, unaware that someone was watching her. Mr. van der Holt slowly lowered his tablet, his gaze fixed on her. "Incredible," he murmured under his breath. "That's a pure Rotterdam accent." When Amara ended the call, she suddenly felt his eyes on her and froze in embarrassment. She quickly slipped the phone back into her pocket and straightened up. "Sorry, sir," she said quietly. "It won't happen again." But instead of scolding her, a faint smile appeared on his face, curious yet kind. "It's quite all right," he replied, and in Dutch. Amara stopped in her tracks, startled. Her ears immediately recognized the familiar rhythm of her native tongue. Slowly, she lifted her eyes to meet his. And for the first time since she had started working there, someone truly saw her. Amara stood frozen for a moment, unsure if she had heard him correctly. The Dutch words slipped from his lips effortlessly, polished with the accent of someone who had spent his life surrounded by wealth and education. Her heart skipped a beat. She hadn't spoken to anyone in her native language outside her family in years. "Yes, sir," she finally replied, her tone quiet, unsure of what he expected. "I grew up in Rotterdam." Mr. van der Holt tilted his head slightly, a trace of a smile forming. "Rotterdam? That's my city, too. What are the odds of meeting someone from home here?" His voice carried warmth, but also a subtle authority that made her nervous. She forced a polite smile, gripping her cleaning cloth tightly. "Small world, I guess," she murmured, hoping to end the conversation quickly. Staff weren't supposed to talk too long with guests, especially not the rich ones. But the man didn't walk away. He studied her face with quiet curiosity, noticing the way her posture was respectful but her eyes were intelligent. Too alive, too sharp for someone simply content to scrub floors. "You speak Dutch beautifully," he said after a pause. "Better than some of my own employees." "Thank you, sir." She kept her eyes down, her cheeks burning. She didn't know how to handle compliments anymore. "It's my first language." He nodded thoughtfully, as if committing her name tag to memory. Amara T. Mensah. He spoke again, this time softer. "It's rare to hear our mother tongue here. You made my morning feel a little more like home." Amara blinked, unsure what to say. "That's kind of you, sir." When he finally turned to leave, his reflection lingered in the polished marble behind him. He didn't know why, but something about her unsettled his thoughts. A maid fluent in Dutch from his own city, working in silence in a foreign country. It didn't add up. As she returned to her duties, Amara could still feel the weight of his gaze. The brief exchange replayed in her mind, his tone, his surprise, the way his eyes softened when she spoke. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen, and that frightened her more than being invisible ever had. Upstairs in his suite, Mr. Vanderholt sat by the window, unable to focus on his work. He found himself wondering about the maid with the Dutch tongue, who she was, why she was here, and what story hid behind her silence. Something told him he wasn't done with her yet. The next afternoon, as the sun dipped low and bathed the Grand Royale in a warm amber glow, Amara received an unusual call on her service line. "Suite 1903, the manager said briskly. "The guest specifically requested you." Her brows furrowed. Guests never asked for her by name. Most didn't even bother to remember it. She glanced at the slip of paper confirming the suite number. Mr. Alexander Vanderholt. Her stomach tightened. The Dutch millionaire. The same man whose calm, piercing eyes had followed her voice the day before. Pushing her cart toward the elevator, she straightened her uniform, her mind racing. Had she done something wrong? Was he about to complain? The elevator ride felt endless, the hum of the machinery matching the rhythm of her heartbeat. When she reached the door, she took a steadying breath and knocked softly. The door opened almost immediately. Mr. Vanderholt stood there, no longer in a business suit, but in a casual shirt and slacks. His expression wasn't stern, just calm, composed, and unreadable. "Ah, Amara," he said, his tone gentle. "Please come in." She hesitated at the threshold. "Sir, I was told you needed housekeeping service." "I do," he replied, gesturing toward the tidy room. "But more than that, I was hoping to speak with you, if you don't mind." Her heart pounded. "Speak with me?" He nodded, offering a reassuring smile. "Yes, you see, I haven't been able to stop thinking about what you said yesterday, about Rotterdam. You sounded like home." Amara swallowed hard, her hands fidgeting with the edge of her cleaning cloth. "I didn't mean to disturb you, sir. It was just my mother calling." "Not at all," he said quickly. "It was refreshing." He motioned toward a chair near the window. "Please sit down for a moment." "You don't have to worry. You're not in trouble." Slowly, she stepped inside and sat down, the soft leather creaking under her. The city lights were beginning to flicker outside the window, painting the room in gold and violet hues. Mr. Vanderholt sat across from her, studying her with genuine curiosity. "Tell me," he said, "how does a young woman from Rotterdam end up working here, in New York as a hotel maid?" Amara hesitated, unsure how much to share. "I came here 3 years ago," she began softly. "I studied linguistics back home, Dutch, English, German, even a bit of French. But after my father passed away, everything changed. My mother couldn't work anymore. We lost our home, so I came here thinking I'd find better opportunities." She smiled sadly. "Turns out opportunity doesn't always look like you imagine. The first job I could get was this one. It wasn't what I dreamed of, but it helps me send money back home." Mr. Vanderholt leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. There was no judgment in his eyes, only admiration. "You studied linguistics?" he repeated softly. "That explains your accent. You speak like someone who was meant to teach, not serve." Amara looked down at her hands. "Dreams don't pay bills, sir." He smiled faintly at her honesty. "Perhaps not," he said, "but sometimes the right person can make sure they do." She looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" He didn't answer directly. Instead, he said, "You remind me of someone I once knew, someone who came from nothing but refused to let that define them." Their eyes met in a quiet, unspoken understanding. Two people from the same city, separated by wealth, fate, and circumstance, yet connected by a single familiar language. When she finally stood to leave, he said softly, "Amara, don't hide that part of yourself again. The world needs to hear voices like yours." For the rest of the night, as she moved from room to room, those words echoed in her mind, lighting something inside her that she had long thought was gone. Hope. The next evening, the Grand Royale Hotel glimmered like a palace. The chandeliers sparkled overhead, laughter and music flowed through the grand ballroom, and every guest seemed dressed in gold, silk, and confidence. The hotel was hosting a high-profile business dinner, a gathering of international investors and diplomats. Every member of the staff was tense, moving in silence, making sure not a single glass was out of place. Amara worked quietly in the background, ensuring the hall stayed pristine. She kept her eyes low, avoiding the glittering guests. Her plain black uniform stood in stark contrast to the sea of elegance around her. As she passed the side doors with her cleaning cart, her supervisor suddenly rushed up to her, breathless. "Amara," he said urgently, "Mr. Vanderholt asked to see you, now." She froze. "Me? Are you sure?" He nodded quickly. "Yes. He said to bring you to the main hall." Confused and anxious, Amara followed him through the tall double doors. Inside, the air was heavy with perfume and conversation. Powerful men and women sat around long tables, crystal glasses shimmering under golden light. Mr. Vanderholt stood near the front, speaking with a group of Dutch investors. His presence commanded attention. Calm, regal, completely in control. When he saw Amara, his eyes lit up slightly. He excused himself from his guests and walked toward her. "Amara," he said kindly, "I'm glad you came." She lowered her gaze, embarrassed. "Sir, I shouldn't be here. This dinner is for your guests, not staff." "Nonsense," he said, his tone warm but firm. "You belong here more than most." Before she could protest, he gestured to one of the waiters, who handed her a small box. "Please," he said softly, "go change into what's inside." "You'll understand soon." A few minutes later, she returned, hesitant, her steps slow and uncertain. The box had contained a simple but elegant evening dress, deep blue satin that matched the night sky. Her natural grace made it look as though it were tailored just for her. When she entered, the chatter in the hall softened. Mr. Vanderholt guided her to his table. "Everyone," he said with calm authority, "I'd like you to meet someone special, Amara Mensah." The guests exchanged puzzled glances. A few recognized her as one of the hotel's maids, and whispers rippled quietly through the room. Unbothered, he continued, "She's from Rotterdam, my city, fluent in Dutch, English, and several other languages. A linguist. A mind far too sharp for the work she's been given." The investors looked surprised. One older Dutch businessman chuckled skeptically, switching to Dutch. "Let's see if that's true." Without hesitation, Amara responded, her Dutch pure, confident, flowing effortlessly. She spoke with poise, her words elegant, her accent flawless. The room fell silent as her sentences grew stronger, smoother, more commanding than anyone expected. When she finished, the businessman stared at her, speechless, before offering a respectful nod. "Magnificent," he said. "Truly native." A soft murmur spread through the guests, admiration mixed with disbelief. Amara stood quietly, unsure what to do, until Mr. Vanderholt smiled proudly beside her. "You see," he said, addressing the room, "intelligence and potential are not defined by the uniform someone wears. Sometimes brilliance hides in plain sight, waiting for someone to notice." Applause broke out around the hall. A few guests even stood, impressed not only by her command of language, but by her grace under pressure. Amara's heart pounded, not from fear, but from something she hadn't felt in a long time: pride. She looked at Mr. Vanderholt, who gave her a small, reassuring nod, a silent promise that this moment was only the beginning. The morning after the gala, the Grand Royale Hotel seemed quieter than usual. The grand chandeliers still shimmered, but to Amara everything felt different, lighter, dreamlike. As she walked through the corridors pushing her cleaning cart, people looked at her differently now. The same staff who once passed her without a glance now whispered her name with awe. Some smiled, others stared, unsure how a maid had managed to captivate a room full of millionaires. Amara didn't let it distract her. She still greeted every guest politely, still moved with the same quiet dignity she always had. But deep inside, her heart felt full for the first time in years. Someone had finally seen her, truly seen her. Not as a maid, not as a background figure, but as a woman with intelligence, courage, and worth. By midday, she was finishing her last room when the hotel manager approached her, holding a crisp white envelope. "This came for you," he said, his tone unusually formal. "Delivered by Mr. Vanderholt's assistant." Her hands trembled as she took it. The envelope bore his elegant signature and the seal of Vanderholt Global Foundation. She opened it slowly, her eyes scanning the printed words. It was an official letter, a scholarship and employment offer from the foundation's headquarters in Amsterdam. It invited her to join their team as a translator and cultural liaison, with full relocation and housing support. Beneath it, in his handwriting, was a note. For the woman who reminded me that brilliance often wears humility. Let this be the beginning of your next chapter. Alexander. Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. She pressed the letter to her chest, her breath shaking. For so long she had convinced herself that her dreams were buried under the weight of survival, that her life would always be limited to mopping floors and fading into the background. But now the world had opened a door she never thought she'd see again. That evening she stood by the large window on the 30th floor, her favorite spot, and looked out over the city lights. New York glowed like a sea of gold, endless and alive. Tomorrow, she would board a plane back to Europe, back to the place she once called home. But this time, she wasn't returning as a struggling daughter or an invisible worker. She was returning as a woman reborn, her potential finally recognized. As her final shift ended, Amara placed her cleaning badge neatly on the cart. She ran her fingers over the smooth surface one last time, a quiet smile forming on her lips. She whispered softly, almost like a prayer, "Thank you for seeing me." Hours later, seated by the airplane window, she watched the lights of New York fade beneath the clouds. The engines roared to life, and a new dawn awaited her across the ocean. In her heart, she knew this was more than luck. It was destiny finally catching up. And as the plane soared higher, Amara whispered in Dutch, her voice steady and full of gratitude, "Ik zal niet vergeten wie ik was. Maar ik weet nu wie ik kan zijn." I won't forget who I was, but now I know who I can be.